He ruled Seoul's nightlife like a king. Kang Min-jae, the name whispered in boardrooms and backrooms alike, corporate titan by day, shadow emperor by night. A man who'd never met a person he couldn't read, a deal he couldn't close, or a woman he couldn't charm. Then he saw her at midnight on a red Ducati, leaning against her bike like she owned the street. He thought she was just another beautiful distraction. He was wrong. By dawn, when her security detail appeared at his compound with a message he couldn't ignore, Min-jae finally understood. You don't flirt with a queen and expect to walk away unchanged. Welcome back, besties. Tonight's story will take you from Seoul's neon-soaked streets to the heart of a power struggle that will leave you breathless. Make sure you stay till the end, because when two empires collide, no one escapes unburned. The Gangnam district never truly slept. Even at 2 a.m., the streets pulsed with light, neon signs in electric pink, acid green, and blood red bleeding into the night sky. Korean characters glowed against the darkness, advertising everything from luxury karaoke rooms to exclusive nightclubs where entry cost more than most people's monthly salary. Kang Min-jae sat in his black Bentley Continental, engine purring like a satisfied predator, waiting for the light to change. His Brioni suit was perfectly tailored. His Patek Philippe caught the reflection of the city lights. His signature sunglasses stayed on even at this hour, not because he needed them, but because they were armor. A barrier between the world and the man who never let anyone see too deep. He just left a negotiation at one of his nightclub properties. The kind of meeting that happened in soundproof back offices where ledgers told two different stories and handshakes sealed arrangements that would never appear in any contract. Then he heard it. The growl of a high-performance motorcycle. Deep, powerful, intentional. Not the whine of a delivery bike or the buzz of some kid's modified street racer. This was a machine that demanded respect. The red Ducati Panigale V4 rolled to a stop beside his Bentley, and Min-jae felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine surprise. The rider was a woman. That much was obvious from the way the black leather racing suit curved around a body that knew exactly what power felt like. Long legs bracketed the machine. One gloved hand rested casually on the handlebar. The other hung loose, confident, relaxed. She turned her head toward his car window. Even before she lifted her visor, Min-jae could feel the weight of her gaze. When she finally revealed her face, his carefully maintained composure cracked. Dark skin that seemed to absorb the neon light and reflect it back as something richer. Eyes that assessed him in one sweep, not with admiration, but with the cold calculation of someone tallying assets and liabilities. Full lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. More like a challenge. Nice car, she said. Her voice carried an accent he couldn't immediately place, American, but with rounded vowels and a melodic quality that suggested African roots. Must be compensating for something. The comment should have irritated him. Min-jae was used to deference, to careful words chosen to please him. Instead, he felt a thrill of interest, sharp and unexpected. He leaned toward his window, allowing the smile that had opened 1,000 doors. Says the woman on a crotch rocket at 2 in the morning. Little dangerous, don't you think? Only for people who can't handle danger. Her eyes glittered with amusement. You look like the type who watches from the safety of tinted windows. And you look like the type who makes poor decisions just to prove you can. Or maybe I make calculated risks while men like you sit in expensive cars wondering what freedom feels like. The traffic light turned green. The Bentley ahead of him didn't move, typical Gangnam traffic, even at this hour. Min-jae found himself leaning further out his window, breaking his own rules about maintaining distance. Have dinner with me. No. Drinks, then. I know every exclusive lounge in this city. I'm sure you do. She revved the engine once, a warning growl. And I'm sure they're all very impressed with you. I'm not. Then what would impress you? For just a moment, her expression shifted. The armor cracked, and he saw something underneath. Something that looked almost like loneliness, like recognition, like she saw in him a reflection she didn't expect to find. Then the visor came down, hiding her face. Figure it out, pretty boy. If you're as smart as your reputation says, you'll manage. I don't even know your name. Then you'll have to work harder than you're used to. Before Min-jae could respond, she shot forward, the Ducati weaving between cars with surgical precision. The red motorcycle disappeared into Seoul's maze of streets within seconds, leaving only the fading rumble of her engine and a trace of perfume, something exotic and spicy that lingered like smoke. Min-jae sat motionless, staring at the empty space where she'd been. The car behind him honked. The traffic had moved forward. He barely noticed. For the first time in a decade, someone had dismissed Kang Min-jae. For the first time in his life, he actually cared about changing their mind. For the first time since he'd inherited his family's empire, he felt something other than the weight of duty. He felt alive. 4 days crawled by like torture. For days where Kang Min-jae, the man who controlled Seoul's most profitable nightlife territory and sat on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies, could not focus on anything except a woman whose name he didn't know. Her voice interrupted conference calls. Her laugh, God, that laugh, echoed through his thoughts during contract negotiations. That look she'd given him, equal parts dismissal and dare, haunted his sleep until he woke tangled in silk sheets, frustrated and furious. "You're distracted," said Choi Sang-woo, his head of security and oldest friend, during their morning briefing at Min-jae's penthouse office. "The Young family is asking about the protection arrangement for their casino opening. They've been waiting 3 days for your answer. Tell them standard rates. 15% of door revenue, plus consultation fees." Min-jae barely glanced up from his phone, scrolling through nothing, hoping irrationally that somehow she might appear in his messages despite never having his number. "You haven't even reviewed the Young proposal. This is a 40 million won monthly contract. I don't need to review it. I wrote the template." Sang-woo exchanged glances with Lee Hae-jin, Min-jae's attorney and the only woman who'd ever dared argue with him in business meetings. They'd both worked for the Kang family for over a decade. They knew Min-jae's moods, his patterns, his tells. This wasn't normal. "The charity gala is tomorrow night," Hae-jin said carefully, watching his face. "You confirmed attendance weeks ago. Politicians, international investors, all of Seoul's elite. You're expected to make remarks about the Kang Foundation's Youth Development Initiative." "I know what's expected." Min-jae stood abruptly, adjusting his 3-piece Ermenegildo Zegna suit with sharp, irritated movements. "I've been performing at these events since I was 16. I could do it in my sleep." What he didn't say, he was already planning what to wear, how to position himself, which rooms to work, because in some irrational corner of his mind, he kept hearing that voice. Somewhere you can't follow. He'd prove her wrong. He had to. The Shilla Hotel blazed with light the following evening, its facade illuminated like a palace. Black cars lined the circular driveway, Mercedes, BMW, the occasional Rolls-Royce. Photographers crowded the entrance, cameras flashing like small explosions as Korea's elite emerged in designer gowns and tailored suits. This was Seoul's upper stratosphere. The 0.001% who shaped policy over champagne and made billion-won decisions during bathroom conversations. CEOs mingled with parliament members. K-pop moguls talked quietly with pharmaceutical heirs. Old family names pressed against new tech fortunes. Min-jae arrived in his Bentley, emerging in a midnight black Brioni suit that had been measured, cut, and fitted in their Milan atelier. His Patek Philippe Grand Complications caught the camera flashes. His hair was styled with just enough calculated imperfection. His sunglasses stayed on, even here, even now, maintaining the barrier between the public Min-jae and the man underneath. He'd attended 100 events exactly like this. Knew precisely which hands to shake, which conversations to enter, which politicians to charm, which business heirs to calculate against. But tonight, the air felt different. Charged. Like the moment before a storm breaks. Min-jae moved through the hotel's marble lobby, nodding at familiar faces, when Sang-woo's voice came through his discreet earpiece. "Boss. We have a situation." Min-jae's expression didn't change, but his hand moved subtly to his pocket where he kept his phone on silent. "What kind of situation?" Security flagged someone at the entrance. No invitation, but credentials that got her past the first checkpoint. "She's asking to see you specifically." "Name." A pause. "She wouldn't give one." "But boss, she's on a red Ducati, and..." Min-jae's heart stopped. "Where?" "VIP parking. East entrance." "But Min-jae, her security detail is..." He was already moving. Min-jae pushed through the gala's side exit, ignoring the curious stares from guests smoking on the terrace. His polished leather shoes clicked against marble, then concrete, as he descended toward the VIP parking area. The red Ducati sat under a streetlight like a jewel on display. Empty. His pulse quickened. Where was she? Mr. Kong. Sang-woo's voice came through the earpiece again, tighter now. She left. Heading east toward Hanamdong. Do you want me to follow her? Min-jae was already moving back to his Bentley, gesturing sharply for his driver to step aside. I'm driving. Boss, this could be. I don't care what it could be. Track that bike. Seoul blurred past his windows as Min-jae wove through late-night traffic with the precision of someone who'd learned to drive on these streets during high school races he wasn't supposed to enter. His security team followed in 2 black SUVs, maintaining distance but staying close enough to respond if needed. The chase led them away from Gangnam's glittering excess, through neighborhoods that grew progressively darker, quieter, until they reached the Han River docks, a stretch of warehouses and private moorings where legitimate business ended and his family's other enterprises began. Min-jae knew these docks. The Kong family had controlled shipping access here for 3 generations. The Ducati sat parked outside Warehouse 7, its engine still ticking with residual heat. He pulled his Bentley to a stop 50 meters away, killed the engine. Through his windshield, he could see the warehouse's massive door standing halfway open, spilling yellow light across oil-stained concrete. Boss, wait for backup, Sang-woo urged through the earpiece. But Min-jae was already stepping out of the car, adjusting his suit jacket, his hand instinctively checking the custom Sig Sauer he kept in a shoulder holster beneath his Brioni blazer. A habit from his father's lessons. Always be armed. Always be ready. Kings don't have the luxury of helplessness. He'd barely taken 5 steps when figures materialized from the shadows. 4 men, moving with military precision, forming a perimeter around him. Not Korean. Their builds, their movements, their weapons, AR-15 variants held with professional familiarity, spoke of international training. Private security, the kind that protected warlords and oil executives. Min-jae froze, calculating odds, exit strategies, the distance to his car. Then she emerged from the warehouse. Same leather racing suit, but now she moved with different energy. Not the playful stranger from Gangnam traffic, but something harder. More dangerous. She walked like someone used to armed men parting before her. You followed me, she said, her accent suddenly sharper, less honey and more blade. Persistent. I'll give you that. You wanted me to follow you. Min-jae kept his hands visible, but his voice carried the authority of someone unaccustomed to being outmaneuvered. This was a test. Her smile was cold. Everything is a test, Mr. Kong. Question is, are you smart enough to pass? One of her security detail moved closer, weapon raised slightly. Min-jae's hand twitched toward his holster. I wouldn't, she said softly. You're very handsome, pretty boy. Would be ashamed to ruin that suit with bullet holes. Min-jae arrived at his office the next morning with his jaw still tight from the previous night's humiliation. Zuri had let him leave the docks with nothing but questions and a warning that felt more like a promise. We'll talk again soon. On my terms. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those 4 rifles pointed at his chest, felt the acute awareness of how easily she could have ended him. No one had made Kong Min-jae feel powerless in years. He hated it. He craved more of it. He didn't understand himself anymore. His penthouse office occupied the 42nd floor of the Kong Tower in Gangnam, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's sprawling wealth. His assistant had already placed his usual espresso on the black lacquer desk, arranged his schedule in a leather portfolio, ensured everything was precisely as he liked it. Control. Order. Predictability. Min-jae removed his sunglasses, set them beside his coffee, and opened his laptop. Good morning, Mr. Kong. He spun so fast his chair nearly toppled. She sat in the leather wingback chair facing his desk, legs crossed, wearing a white silk blouse and tailored black pants that somehow made her look more dangerous than the racing leathers had. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Diamond studs glinted in her ears, understated, expensive, real. How the hell did you get past security? The same way I got past your family's shipping manifests, your offshore accounts in the Caymans, and the very interesting records of your father's arrangement with the Philippine syndicate in 2019. She smiled, and it was all teeth. I'm very good at getting into places I'm not supposed to be. Min Jae's hand moved toward the desk drawer where he kept his secondary weapon. Don't. Her voice didn't rise, but something in it made him pause. Your security chief, Choi Sang-woo, is currently having coffee in your break room with my associate. Your attorney, Lee Hai-jin, is reviewing a contract I sent her at 6 this morning. And your assistant thinks I'm a consultant from the Seoul Investment Group. No one is coming to save you from this conversation. What do you want? Min Jae forced himself to sit, to project the calm authority that had built his reputation. Money. Territory. A partnership. I want, she said, leaning forward slightly, you to understand exactly who you flirted with in traffic 4 nights ago. She pulled out her phone, swiped twice, and turned the screen toward him. Financial records. Shipping routes. Photographs of his father with men Min Jae recognized from family stories, but had never met. Transactions that existed only in encrypted ledgers his father had shown him once, years ago, with the warning, these secrets die with us. My name is Zuri Alexandria Brooks, she continued, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. And I know everything about the Kong family legacy. Every deal. Every body. Every lie you tell yourselves about being legitimate businessmen. She stood, smoothing her blouse, and walked to his window. Seoul stretched below them, glittering and unaware. The question isn't what I want, Mr. Kong. The question is whether you're smart enough to want what I'm offering. Which is? She turned, backlit by the morning sun, and smiled. Survival. Min Jae opened his mouth to respond, but the words died in his throat as his office door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The reinforced wood splintered off its hinges, and 3 men in black tactical gear poured through the opening, weapons raised. Not the cautious entry of amateurs, these moved like professionals, fanning out with practiced efficiency, cutting off exit routes. Min Jae's hand finally reached his desk drawer, but the lead intruder fired a single shot that punched through the lacquer inches from his fingers. Hands where I can see them, Min Jae SSI. The man's Korean carried a Busan accent, rough and mocking. He pulled down his balaclava, revealing a face Min Jae recognized immediately. Park Tae-sung, enforcer for the Sangyong-pa, the twin dragon gang that had been pushing into Kong territory for months. Your father's protection doesn't reach everywhere anymore, Park continued, gesturing with his Glock. Old man's getting weak. Time for new management. Min Jae's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds. 3 armed men. His weapon in the drawer, unreachable. Sang-woo was floors away, probably already dead or detained if they'd made it this far into the building. He'd been so focused on Zuri that he'd missed the real threat. And the woman? Park's attention shifted to Zuri, who stood motionless by the window, her expression unreadable. Wrong place, wrong time, sweetheart. But pretty. Maybe we keep you alive a little longer. Let the boys have some. Zuri moved. One moment she stood still. The next, her hand emerged from behind her back holding something Min Jae didn't immediately recognize. A compact pistol, matte black, custom-built. She fired 3 times in rapid succession, the suppressed shots sounding like sharp coughs. Park's 2 men dropped before their brains registered the threat. Park himself spun toward her, raising his Glock, but Zuri was already moving again, closing the distance with speed that seemed impossible in heels. She swept his gun arm aside with her left hand while driving her weapon up under his chin with her right. Bulletproof vest, she said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Smart. Most of Min Jae's enemies wear them now. But you forgot about your head. Park's eyes were wide, sweat beading on his forehead. You, who the fuck are you? Someone who just saved your target's life. She glanced at Min Jae, her expression cool. Which means he owes me. And I always collect my debts. She pulled the trigger. Park's body crumpled to the expensive carpet, leaking red across cream fibers. Min Jae stood slowly, his hand still raised, staring at the woman who'd just killed 3 men in his office with the casual efficiency of someone swatting flies. Where, he managed, his voice rough. Did you hide that weapon? Zuri smiled, ejecting the magazine to check her remaining rounds. Trade secret. But here's what's not secret. The twin dragons knew about this meeting. Someone in your organization told them where you'd be, when you'd be vulnerable, and that your security would be distracted. She reloaded with practiced ease. You have a traitor, Mr. Kong. And you're going to need my help finding them. Why would you help me? Because, she said, stepping over Park's corpse, dead men can't give me what I want. The cleanup took 40 minutes. Sang-woo arrived with a team that moved with practiced efficiency, removing bodies, replacing carpet sections, installing a new door. The kind of crew that existed specifically for moments when legitimate business and family legacy collided in ways that couldn't involve police reports. Min-jae watched from his desk, his espresso long cold, as his office was restored to pristine condition. Like 3 men hadn't died here. Like his authority hadn't been shattered in front of a woman who'd saved his life with a weapon she'd concealed so perfectly, he still couldn't figure out where. Zuri stood by the window throughout, making occasional calls in languages he didn't recognize. Giving orders, receiving reports. Operating with the confidence of someone who commanded infrastructure he couldn't see. When the last crew member departed and Sang-woo closed the new door with a meaningful look, Min-jae and Zuri were finally alone. Your security chief doesn't trust me, she observed, turning from the window. He's paid not to trust anyone. Min-jae poured himself a fresh espresso from the silver service cart, his hands steadier than he expected. Can I offer you something? Coffee. Whiskey. An explanation for why you're really in Seoul. All 3, actually. He poured 2 glasses of Hibiki 30-year, the bottle his father had given him when he'd taken over operations. For celebrating victories and surviving betrayals, the old man had said. You'll need it for both. Zuri accepted the glass, studying the amber liquid before taking a measured sip. Smooth. Your father had good taste. Had. Min-jae's eyes narrowed. He's not dead. Not yet. But the cancer is stage 4, and he's refused treatment. You have maybe 6 months before you inherit everything officially. She met his gaze without flinching. I know things about your family you haven't learned yet, Mr. Kong. That's what I do. Information is my currency. Min-jae felt something crack inside him. The careful walls he'd maintained since his father's diagnosis. The performance of control he'd perfected since taking over operations 3 years ago. The weight of a legacy built on violence and secrets pressing down until he could barely breathe. He reached up and removed his sunglasses. Set them on the desk. Met her eyes without the armor for the first time. My name is Min-jae, he said quietly. Not Mr. Kong. Not boss. Just Min-jae. And if we're going to work together, if I'm going to trust you to help me find whoever sold me out to the twin dragons, then I need to know your real agenda. Not the performance. Not the mystique. The truth. Zuri studied him for a long moment, and he saw something shift in her expression. Recognition, maybe. Or respect. The truth, she said, setting down her glass, is that your family has something my organization needs. Territory, yes. But more than that, legitimacy. Your name opens doors that money alone can't touch. And in 6 months, when you inherit everything, you'll control the most valuable asset in East Asia's underworld, access. To what? Everything. She smiled, but it was different now. Less predatory, more genuine. I'm not here to destroy you, Min-jae. I'm here to build an empire. With you. The war room occupied the sub-basement of Kong Tower, 3 levels below the parking garage. Concrete walls, no windows, soundproofing that could muffle a gunshot. Min-jae's father had built it during the IMF crisis when rival organizations had tried to cannibalize the Kong Empire. Now Min-jae stood before a wall of monitors displaying security feeds, financial records, and personnel files, with Zuri at his side and Sang-woo manning the computer terminals. Show me everyone who knew about this morning's meeting, Zuri said, her tone clinical. Min-jae nodded to Sang-woo, who pulled up a list. 8 names appeared on the central screen. My inner circle, Min-jae explained. The only people with access to my daily schedule more than 24 hours in advance. Zuri studied each face, each dossier, her eyes moving with the precision of someone trained to spot patterns others missed. Cross-reference their financial transactions for the past 6 months. Look for unexplained deposits, sudden lifestyle changes, new vehicles, property purchases. Sang-woo's fingers flew across the keyboard. Numbers cascaded down screens. Nothing unusual, he reported after several minutes. Everyone's clean. Then look deeper. Zuri leaned over the console. Gambling debts. Medical bills for family members. Children's private school tuition that doesn't match reported income. People don't betray empires for greed alone, they betray for desperation. Min-jae watched her work, seeing the intelligence behind the dangerous exterior. She wasn't just muscle and mystique. She was a strategist who understood that every person had a pressure point. Wait! Sang-woo highlighted a name. Kim Jae-won, your logistics coordinator. His daughter was admitted to Seoul National University Hospital 3 months ago. Leukemia. Treatment costs are astronomical, but there's no corresponding loan or withdrawal from his accounts. Someone else is paying, Min-jae said quietly, feeling the betrayal like a physical wound. Jae-won had worked for his father for 15 years, had attended Min-jae's university graduation, had been a constant presence in the background of his life. The twin dragons promised to cover the treatment, Zuri said, reading the financial trail. In exchange for information. He's been feeding them your movements for 3 months. This morning was supposed to be the payoff. They eliminate you, install their own puppet, and Jae-won's daughter lives. Min-jae closed his eyes. Felt the weight of legacy pressing down. His father would have killed Jae-won without hesitation. Blood for blood. That was the old way. But Min-jae wasn't his father. We need proof, he said. Something that ties him directly to Park Tae-sung. And we need to hit the twin dragons hard enough that no one else thinks betrayal is worth the cost. Zuri pulled out her phone, typed rapidly. I can have a team assembled in 2 hours. Former South African Special Forces. They specialize in surgical strikes. And Jae-won. That's your call. She met his eyes. But make it count. How you handle betrayal defines what kind of empire you'll build. Min-jae looked at the man's file. At the photo of his daughter, thin and fragile in a hospital bed. We save the girl, he said finally. Then we end this. Zuri smiled. Now you're thinking like a king. The strike was set for midnight. The twin dragons operated from a nightclub in Itaewon, laundering money through bottle service and VIP rooms while running their real business in the basement levels. Min-jae had planned to arrive in his Bentley with Sang-woo's security team, projecting the power and authority expected of the Kong heir. Zuri had other ideas. You're riding with me, she said, tossing him a leather jacket and helmet in the Kong Tower parking garage. The red Ducati gleamed under fluorescent lights, looking more like a weapon than a vehicle. I don't. You don't ride. I know. She swung her leg over the bike with fluid grace. But your enemies are watching the streets for black SUVs and luxury sedans. They're not watching for this. We go in fast, we go in unexpected, and we leave before they can coordinate a response. That's insane. That's strategy. She patted the seat behind her. You trusted me this morning when I killed 3 men in your office. Trust me now. Min-jae climbed on behind her, acutely aware of how close their bodies were, how his arms wrapped around her waist, how the leather of her jacket was warm from her body heat. Hold tight, pretty boy, she said, and the engine roared to life. They shot out of the garage like a red bullet, and Min-jae's carefully maintained composure evaporated as Seoul became a blur of neon and speed. Zuri wove through traffic with impossible precision, leaning into turns that made his stomach drop, accelerating through gaps that seemed too narrow to exist. His earpiece crackled. Boss, we've got a problem. Sang-woo's voice was tight. Twin dragons have spotters on every major route to Itaewon. They're waiting for us. Take the tunnels, Zuri said calmly, somehow hearing through her own helmet. The Namsan tunnel system. They won't expect it. She banked hard right, diving into the tunnel entrance as a black sedan, twin dragon colors, pulled out behind them. Then another. 3 total, engines screaming as they gave chase. The tunnel was a river of light, yellow sodium lamps streaking past as Zuri accelerated to speeds that should have been suicidal. Min-jae could see the pursuing cars in the mirrors, gaining ground, their superior horsepower making up for Zuri's agility. They're going to ram us, he shouted over the engine noise. I know. Zuri's voice was steady, almost amused. Watch this. She waited until the lead sedan was meters behind them, then hit the brakes and simultaneously yanked the bike into a controlled slide. The Ducati spun 180 degrees, now facing the oncoming traffic, the pursuing sedan screaming past in confusion. Before they could react, Zuri accelerated again, shooting through a maintenance tunnel entrance Min-jae hadn't even seen. Darkness swallowed them. Emergency lights flickered past. Zuri navigated by memory or instinct. Min-jae couldn't tell which, through turns and junctions that appeared without warning. They emerged into a service alley 3 blocks from the target nightclub. Zuri killed the engine, kicked down the stand, and removed her helmet. Not even breathing hard. You were saying something about insane? She smiled at his expression. I prefer tactically innovative. Min-jae climbed off the bike on shaking legs, his heart hammering against his ribs. Where the hell did you learn to ride like that? Cape Town street races, Nairobi courier runs, and a very patient instructor in Lagos who taught me that speed isn't about going fast, it's about knowing every route your enemies don't. The nightclub assault went exactly as planned. Zuri's team moved through the Twin Dragons headquarters with surgical precision, and within 20 minutes, the organization's leadership was either dead or fleeing Seoul. No more threats. No more challenges to Kong authority. Min-jae should have felt victorious. Instead, standing in his penthouse at 2 a.m, watching Sang-woo pour celebratory whiskey, he felt the weight of something unfinished. Jae-won is in custody, Sang-woo reported, handing Min-jae a glass. Cooperative. Gave us everything, bank records, communication logs, the whole network. His daughter's treatment is being continued under our arrangement. And he understands the cost of betrayal? He'll never work in this city again. But he's alive, and his daughter will survive. Sang-woo raised his glass. Your father would have handled it differently, but I think you made the right call. Mercy can be its own kind of power. They drank, and Min-jae felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Zuri had left an hour ago to debrief her team, promising to return in the morning to discuss their partnership's next phase. Partnership. The word felt strange. Foreign. But also right in ways he was only beginning to understand. You're falling for her, Sang-woo said quietly, setting down his glass. I barely know her. That's not an answer. Sang-woo moved to the window, his reflection ghostly against the Seoul skyline. She's dangerous, Min-jae. Not just her skills, her agenda. You don't really know why she's here or what she wants beyond vague promises about empire building. She saved my life. Twice. And that earns loyalty? Sang-woo turned, and something in his expression made Min-jae's hand move instinctively toward his weapon. Or does it earn control? The air in the room changed. Crystallized. What are you saying, Hyung? Min-jae used the familiar term deliberately, reminding Sang-woo of their history. 20 years of friendship. A brotherhood forged in blood and business. I'm saying your father asked me to protect the Kong legacy. Not you. The legacy. Sang-woo's hand emerged from his jacket holding a compact pistol. And you're threatening everything he built by bringing in an outsider. A foreigner who knows too much and offers too little. Min-jae's world tilted. You're working with the Twin Dragons? I'm working for your family's future. The dragons were useful idiots, meant to make you paranoid, make you dependent on me, make you see that you needed traditional advisors, not some African mercenary with a pretty face. Sang-woo's voice carried genuine regret. I didn't want it to go this far. But you wouldn't listen. You never listen. The penthouse door exploded inward for the second time that day. Zuri stood in the entrance, weapon drawn, her security team flanking her. She must have been watching, waiting, testing. Her eyes met Min-jae's across the room, and in that moment, he understood. She'd known about Sang-woo. Had probably known from the beginning. Had given Min-jae enough rope to either hang himself or prove he was worth the investment. So, Zuri said softly, her weapon trained on Sang-woo. What's it going to be, Min-jae? The past that's trying to kill you, or the future that just saved your life again? Sang-woo didn't lower his weapon. You're making a mistake, Min-jae. Your father built this empire on Korean blood and Korean loyalty. You bring in outsiders, and everything crumbles. My father, Min-jae said quietly, his hand steady on his own pistol now, built this empire on adaptation. He survived the IMF crisis by partnering with the Yakuza. He expanded into Southeast Asia by allying with the triads. He taught me that loyalty without vision is just another word for stagnation. He also taught you that family comes first. You're not family, Hyung. You're an employee who just pointed a gun at his employer. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sang-woo's expression flickered, pain, anger, resignation cycling through in rapid succession. Last chance, Zuri said. Drop the weapon, and you walk out of here alive. Keep it raised, and my team drops you before your finger moves. Sang-woo's laugh was bitter. You think this ends with me? Half the organization is loyal to the old ways. They're waiting at headquarters right now, ready to vote you out, Min-jae. Your father's advisors, the family council, everyone who thinks you're too young, too reckless, too seduced by foreign influence. He lowered his weapon slowly, setting it on the floor. You want to keep your throne? You're going to have to fight for it. Kong headquarters occupied a restored Hanok complex in Bukshan, traditional Korean architecture hiding state-of-the-art security and the administrative heart of a criminal empire. Min-jae had grown up running through these courtyards, learning the business in rooms where his grandfather had made decisions that shaped Seoul's underworld. Now he approached it like enemy territory. 16 guards at the perimeter, Zuri reported, studying the security feeds her team had hacked. Another 20 inside. The council chamber has your father's top 8 advisors, plus representatives from allied organizations. They're waiting for you. It's a trap, Min-jae said. Obviously. She checked her weapon, then looked at him with something like respect. But sometimes you have to walk into the trap to prove you're not afraid of it. They entered through the main gate, making no attempt at stealth. Min-jae in his Brioni suit, Zuri in tactical black, her security team spread in formation behind them. A show of force. A declaration. The guards didn't stop them. Just watched with neutral expressions as Min-jae walked the path his father had walked for 40 years. The council chamber was exactly as he remembered. Low table, silk cushions, scrolls on the walls depicting scenes of historical battles. 8 men sat waiting, their faces carved from decades of violence and negotiation. At the head of the table sat his father. Min-jae stopped. His father wasn't supposed to be here. Wasn't supposed to know about this meeting. Unless. You think I didn't know about Sang-woo? Kang Dae-young's voice was rough from illness, but still carried absolute authority. About the twin dragons? About your new partnership? The old man's eyes moved to Zuri. I've been watching you since you entered my city, Ms. Brooks. Testing my son. Testing you. Testing whether the Kong Empire could survive what comes next. He stood slowly, painfully. The question is, are you ready to claim it? Min-jae stared at his father, feeling the ground shift beneath him. You orchestrated all of this? Not orchestrated. Observed. Kang Dae-young moved around the table with the careful steps of a man whose body was failing, but whose mind remained sharp as a blade. The twin dragons were already moving against us. Sang-woo's doubts were already festering. Jae-won's desperation was already there. I simply allowed events to unfold naturally. You let me walk into an ambush in my own office. I let you prove you could survive one. The old man's eyes held something Min-jae had rarely seen, pride. And you did. Not with traditional methods. Not by following the playbook I wrote. You adapted. You formed an alliance I never would have considered. You showed mercy where I would have shown only strength. Kang Dae-young turned to the council. My son is ready. The question is, are you ready to follow him into a world I won't live to see? The eldest advisor, a man who'd served the Kong family for 3 generations, spoke carefully. And the outsider. She represents interests we don't understand, connections we can't verify. I represent, Zuri said, stepping forward with the confidence of someone who'd faced down worse than 8 old men in a traditional room, the future. East Africa, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. Markets you've barely touched because you don't have the infrastructure or the trust. I'm offering both. in exchange for a share of this territory and a legitimate partnership. A partnership that makes us vulnerable to foreign influence. A partnership that makes you global. She pulled out a tablet, displayed documents. These are signed agreements with organizations in Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and Accra. They're waiting for access to Asian markets. Through the Kong Empire. Through Minjay. The room fell silent as the advisors absorbed what she was offering. Not a takeover. An expansion that would multiply their power exponentially. The world is changing, Minjay said quietly, finding his voice. We can change with it, or we can die clinging to traditions that no longer protect us. My father built this empire by understanding when to fight and when to evolve. I'm choosing evolution. Kong De-young smiled, and it transformed his illness-worn face into something almost peaceful. Then I can die knowing the Kong legacy will outlive me. The balcony overlooked Seoul from the penthouse's western edge. The sun was rising, painting the city in gold and crimson, burning away the shadows where they'd operated for so long. Minjay stood without his sunglasses, without his armor, feeling the morning light on his face for the first time in years. Zuri stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Your father approved the partnership, she said. The council voted unanimously. You're officially the head of the Kong Empire now. And you're officially my partner. Co-sovereign, she corrected with a slight smile. I don't do subordinate positions. I noticed. He turned to face her, seeing the woman who'd challenged him, saved him, transformed him in the span of a week. Why me? You could have partnered with any organization in Asia. Why choose the Kong family? Because you took off your sunglasses. Her answer was simple, honest. Everyone else I approached saw me as a threat to eliminate or a resource to exploit. You saw me as a person worth knowing. That's rarer than you think in our world. And the flirting in traffic? The performance. Every queen needs to test her king. She looked out over the city, their city now. Make sure he's worth building an empire with. Minjay reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. So what now? He asked. Zuri's smile was sharp, dangerous, and absolutely genuine. Now we show them what two sovereigns can build when they refuse to play by the old rules. Below them, Seoul awakened to a new era.